Ciaran, it's interesting that you speak about hostility there, but you just recently told me a story about your father. And your father was, he worked in Guinness.
He did, Guinness
Would you
Brewery, yes.
like to tell the listeners all about the Guinness story? And
well, the interesting thing about the Guinness story is that he came to work in Guinness's brewery in 1942 or 43, just before the outbreak of the Second World War. And at that time, he was an unskilled labourer. That was how he was described, an unskilled labourer. And 100% almost of the unskilled labourers in Guinness's brewery would have been Roman Catholic, and there would have been no senior management or middle management other than people of the Protestant tradition. My father often said that began to change after De Valera visited the brewery in 46, I beg your pardon, 48 I think it was, and he said that gradually then the brewery began to open up, and Catholics began to progress in their careers and to attain more senior positions. The other point that my father often made to me was that he said he came from East Limerick, and he said that he had never experienced bigotry, religious bigotry of any type as a child growing up in East Limerick. He said the Protestants came to all social functions of Catholics, including the ordination of priests. Protestants were always welcome, and there was no bigotry, no hostility or no discrimination of any sort. But he did say that when he came to the brewery that there was at least one orange man, as he described him, who was in some position of authority. I think he was a foreman, and that the general workers would have to ask his permission to visit the lavatory, and he might or he might not grant that permission. So that wasn't the first I ever heard of Orangism or orange men, and it's an interesting fact that now I hold the Orange Order in very high regard, particularly because it was the only all-Ireland organisation that came out in defence of the 8th Amendment and called on the people of the Republic of Ireland not to vote to allow for the murder of unborn children in their mother's wombs. So I hold the Orange Order in ever-growing esteem, and I'm privileged at the moment to be working with a member of that order in the production of a bilingual series of booklets on the history of the Orange Order, not just in Northern Ireland, but in every county on the island of Ireland.
Yeah. You took us to the church, basically, where you grew up, and you told us some stories about that. And it's interesting, on the way here, what we found is that up through our sat nav, that there's 3 St. Canice's churches in and around this Finglas area. This one here, would you like to tell us where we are?
We're now outside the Anglican or Church of Ireland chapel here in Finglas. It's a very beautiful, small church. It's been renovated, as you can see. It was damaged over the years, but it has a small but a very loyal congregation, and in fact I'm privileged to be very friendly with the person who often leads the congregation at Sunday worship. It's a very small group, and I'm also very privileged to be able to say that my own family, and particularly my father, was very friendly with the small group of Protestants that lived close to us as we grew up as children, and there was never any discrimination or any ill feeling, always the best of friendship between us. And as a young boy growing up, I had friends who were of the Protestant tradition, and we were very close. In fact, 2 of them, I was just remembering earlier, became members of the RUC. That would have been about 1970. So there is that side to the history of Ireland that people forget, that there was a tradition of people from the south going north to join the RUC. Yeah. I had a romantic involvement with a young Protestant lady at one stage, young Protestant girl, and as I say, our friendships were very warm and very close.
Yeah, but there was a hostility towards that. Would there have been within your own community?
Well, I think probably at that time the idea of people becoming attached to people of other denominations was probably frowned on to some extent, and I think for religious reasons, but also for social reasons, I think that there would have been mixed reasons. but I think that would be certainly very much a thing of the past.
Certainly in Northern Ireland, I mean, one of the most famous songs that was churned out in that wonderful time, the 80s, was a song called Through the Barricades, which kind of explains that in a Northern Ireland context. Generally the communities, because of the hostilities involved in the communities, it wasn't allowed around that time, but some people broke the mould and some people did actually reach through the barricades, which was a good thing.
God.
And today, I guess, I mean, we're here in Dublin doing exactly the same thing. We're reaching through the barricades. And you know, in Northern Ireland, what we find basically, certainly the people that I know, and certainly the people we talk to, and some of the most extremes, well, perceived extremes, would you believe that they I mean, as far as a Roman Catholic's concerned, I mean, they've nothing against. I mean, I don't know where the hostilities occur. I mean, I look at things in being that there are extremists on all ends of the spectrum, and if only these people would tone themselves down. I mean, who knows? Ireland might have been united a very long time ago. Certainly united in terms of the people and, you know, how the people perceive each other. You see, I honestly believe that, you know, your belief, your culture, your way of life, your lifestyle choice, it should be between you and your fellow enthusiast. And if anyone, even like yourself, reaching out to the DUP, I mean, if you subscribe to that and you want to become part of that, you know, you should be permitted to do so, but it should never be forced upon you in a way that it creates that hostility that you speak about, Ciaran.
I think there is that sort of disappointment in a way that some of the people who have been critical of me in my comments on social media and so on in the past have really not been prepared to acknowledge the right of a person from my background to make the political transition I've made. They tend to be very happy to have people from the unionist or the loyalist background come and support a position of republicanism or some sort, but they're very unhappy to have people from the nationalist or the Republican background cross over and become more sympathetic to the unionist point of view, and I think that's an unfortunate situation.